Welcome to The Fall to Grace. I'm Cyan, and this is a podcast where my friend Connor and I hope to bring a grounded, practical approach to mystic wisdom. We believe that the spiritual path requires a little help along the way, so we've created this space to share tips, stories, and conversations with guests who are seekers just like us. In today's episode, we're going to start talking about fear. Now, fear is way too big of a topic to be condensed into one 30-minute episode, so you can definitely expect more on this to come in the future. But for now, we'll just be beginning to explore why fear may show up. Particularly here in this episode, we'll be talking about the feeling of worthlessness, and also we'll be talking about the many ways fear can manifest as irritation, bitchiness, rudeness. For some people, it shows up as the need to control, the need to people please. Even laziness is a fear response. This is a big dragon with many heads. So thank you for being here. Let's get into the episode. I'm Cyan.
And I'm Connor.
And this is The Fall to Grace. So Connor, what are we talking about today?
Well, Cyan, I was hoping we could talk a little bit about fear.
What about fear?
You know, last time we were talking about being on this path, and the best way I know to even get started on this path is to understand fear and how fear plays a role in every part of our lives. I think fear, I come from a tradition, at least, that says fear is an evil and corroding thread that's shot through the very fabric of our existence. And I've always found that saying to be extremely profound because I've found that fear is something that does infiltrate every single decision that I make in my life. Even if it's just to get up in the morning, I am thinking about what I have to do with my day, and I am thinking about what comes next. And I'm plagued by fear from the moment I open my eyes to the moment I go to sleep. But most of us aren't totally cognizant of all of the fear that we have in our lives. And fear shows up in so many different ways throughout our life. It can show up as anger, it can show up as depression, it can show up as anxiety. But at the core of all of those things is our obsession with fear and the fear that we carry with us day in and day out. So I was hoping that in this discussion, we could just have a little bit more of a discourse about how does fear show up in your life and just how do we see fear in the world today? Because in my view, once I began to start seeing the fear in my life, I began to start seeing it in others. That really softened the world around me, and it really let me live my life. Like once I have kind of a hook on this thing called fear, I have a chance. I have a dog in the fight. When I'm still treating it as anger, or I'm still treating it as depression, or I'm still treating it as anxiety, it's like I'm treating the symptoms of the disease. But when I'm really talking about my fear and working with my fear, I'm actually at the root of it.
Lovely. Something that really stuck out to me that you just said is we're scared of the part of us that has fear. Is that what you were implying?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're scared of fear. I mean, we're scared of confronting the fear, and we're scared of being afraid, which is a total paradox because we are just afraid, but we're terrified to admit that to ourselves. So many of us come from a variety of experiences, like we had a rough relationship with a parent, or we had a rough childhood, or we've had rough social circumstances, whatever it is, and we've kind of had these trauma responses that like we are going to be in this situation all the time. If you have a withholding parent, the child learns to try to prove itself to that parent. But what really happens is that child continues to try to prove themselves to everybody around them for their life because they are looking for worth everywhere they go. And so their fear is of being unworthy. And the fact that they haven't really confronted that part of themselves because they don't want that to be true is keeping them from doing anything else. And they are going to continue that pattern. So when we break with fear, we break with a lot of patterns of our behavior and patterns of thinking and feeling.
Some of these childhood experiences that Connor is describing, I think, are the root of this very primal fear we experience. Like we could just be doing the most mundane task, but for some reason it's like a tiger is chasing us. In my own experience, getting into these romantic relationships as an adult, I have this primal fear for some reason. And yeah, it probably kind of goes back to childhood. Like, am I worthless? This person seems to believe I am based on the way that they're treating me. Is that the case? Also, social anxiety and stuff. It just, feels completely primal.
I mean, that's what fear is. Fear used to serve a purpose. This is an evolutionary thing that we have developed fear because it was a guide, that we were afraid of predators or we were afraid of whatever was attacking us. And we learned to move and we learned to adapt and things like that. But what is stuck with us is this same survival instinct, yet the circumstances have entirely changed. We are not dying when we have these group gatherings where we have this social anxiety, and we're not dying when we do things that we're not comfortable with, but we feel like we are. And that's the fear response. So one of the counterbalances to this is really just the recognition of that fear. And this is my point, is that most people won't recognize their fear, and therefore the fear keeps the power. If I can, in a social situation where I'm uncomfortable, kind of really level set and say, wow, it feels like I'm dying. I think I'm dying. I'm afraid that these people are killing me. And I can really realize how absurd that reaction is. That takes a lot of the pressure out in the situation. And this is the way that we kind of escape fear and grow in our lives, is to realize that this is just an emotion and that this is not a real emotion. And when you realize that it's not a real emotion, you can let it go. The more we let this go, the better our lives are, and the better we act, and the better we are in relationships, the better we are in jobs, the better we are with people in general, because we're not coming from a place of fear. It's not, I need you to like me, I need you to love me. It's, what can I do for you? How can I love you? How can I be of service to you? It's a total game changer when we can just recognize and release the fear that we have.
I love this quote. Open your arms if you want to be held. Sometimes you have to make the first step. I always assumed that people would think I was weird because that's kind of something that I've dealt with. And so I'm like a bitch and I like kind of push people away, or I have done that in the past, like before they get the chance to kind of do it to me, I think a little bit, to be honest. But in the past couple years, especially the past year, I've really like opened myself up and opened my arms, hoping to be held. It's like you have to be brave. You have to expose your soft underbelly first. They'll usually rub it instead of being mean to you, I think. Not always, but a lot of times they will. The universe responds to it.
The universe responds to it, and other people do too. I mean, so many people would love to live fearlessly. And so when you start to really confront these things, like, the results show, and people start to see that and admire that. People I admire most in my life are kind of the people who don't give as much of a shit. They are doing what they want to do. They're being authentically themselves in all of these situations. They are loving who they want to and doing what they want to. Not like, oh, I'm off having tons of trips and doing tons of fun things. It's like, no, I'm just creating what I want to and living my small life. That is the person I look up to most, because that is the person who has the least fear. So many of the people that we admire have the most fear, right? Like, if it's a politician, or if it's a celebrity, or if it's like a streaming personality, whatever it is, like, those guys are terrified of losing their relevance, and they latch on and they get louder. And we respond to that as an audience. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, that's the impulse. It's like, I don't want to be irrelevant, and so I have to do more and be more. And when we live that way, we never are living from like an authentic place, and that's a painful life. We have a real strong culture of fear, and how we have like a 24-hour news cycle, and we have politicians who perpetuate all this fear in our lives, and so many of the advertisements that we have in our lives like play on these fundamental fears that we have. If you watch like a BMW commercial, what it is selling you is that you will finally be worthy if you have a BMW. And so when we're really fearful and we hold on to these fears, like, we are the perfect consumer, because we are extremely susceptible to that kind of thing. So when we opt out of this and like really confront these fears, all of our behavior changes, and we're not so susceptible to the news, and we're not so susceptible to outside circumstances. And like consumerism, you don't have to spend all this fucking money to be worth it. You are worth it just as you are, but that is the journey that you need to embark on, is finding that worth in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because how can a deep belief in unity be reconciled with a deep fear of worthlessness? If consciousness is everything and I am one node of that consciousness, how could that ever exist at the same time as me being worthless?
It can't. And that's, I mean, one of the ways out of this, and one of the things that's going to spur you into a very fruitful spiritual life, is this understanding that unity is a goal, and that those things can't coexist. I cannot simultaneously be like a love child of God and be a worthless piece of shit. Those realities don't coexist. But it doesn't really matter if we can wrap our heads around it. The impulse is still there, and the instinct is still there. I mean, the fear is below the mind. And that's a key point here. I mean, I can rationalize all the time that I'm not afraid. This is what anger is, right? I'm not scared of that person. That person's just an asshole. Our mind tends to deflect what fear is. I'm just anxious about going into work, when really I'm just anxious I'm going to do something wrong, and that my worth is going to be reflected that way. So when I have that fear and those fear responses, I'm still screwed. Even if I know that unity is the antithesis of this and I fully believe in it. As long as I still have the latency of it, I'm fucked. And so the exploration is to really be able to sit with this and really be able to examine those things. One of the easiest ways to do this is to think of somebody you hate, to think of somebody who has rubbed you the wrong way or somebody you were really mad at in a social situation, and to ask yourself, like, what about them or what about that interaction was threatening to me? What did it threaten in me? Because for the most part, it just comes down to a few simple things, which is like they made me feel unworthy. They made me feel unloved, right? If somebody insults me, they make me feel unworthy and unloved. And the last category is just survival. Like they may have put your, like when you get mad at somebody in traffic who cuts you off, like it's because they put your life at risk. And so we get mad about that and we said, what a fucking idiot. I can't believe he did that. But really it's like, oh man, I really experienced the thought that I was going to die or the feeling that I was going to die. But when we really take stock of things, it's like, oh, I made it through that interaction. He did cut me off, but I am totally fine. It's all good. Nobody's hurt. Then we realize that the fear is perceived.
Totally. And it kind of reminds me of like a kind of a Christian concept we hear over and over again, pray for your enemies. I really have a resistance to that idea, as I think a lot of people do. And why? Because they hit my fear of worthlessness at some point. The people that I have a grudge for, maybe they tried to steal my boyfriend at one point or something. When I begin to forgive them or pray for them or do whatever, send love and light. It doesn't have to be formal prayer. What do you think that's doing, Connor?
The resistance that you're feeling in that moment, which is just like, I don't want to pray for this person. Like, I don't want to think well about this person, is because you're letting a defense down. I mean, you're really putting down a wall, and the walls protect you, right? Your mind believes that this wall is protecting you from any pain and any danger. And so when you do start to attack these things and you really start to confront those fears, you will experience this kind of resistance a lot. And it comes in a lot of different forms, right? Like, this is so stupid. I can't believe I'm praying for one, right? Like any of these things that your mind is going to throw at you to keep you in that fear. Because we like our defenses. Our defenses make us feel safe. And this is a bit more vulnerable to let somebody in who has hurt you in the past. But once you really dig into your own fear and you can actually sit with these things, you do start to see everybody else the same way. I mean, that's been the biggest part of my journey, is really understanding that, like, all of my flaws, like my need for attention, my need to be seen, my need to be loved, are coming from that place of fear. And that when other people do this crazy stuff, like they act out or they insult somebody or they're mad or they're depressed, like whatever it is that's rubbing me the wrong way, they're just like me. They are acting from that same place of fear. It's not that they want to be mean. It's not that they're evil or malicious. It's that they're afraid. And when I can see everybody else, including myself, as something that is just afraid, I have a lot more compassion in those situations. I mean, I do see everybody on the street as like a scared little child. And I feel that way all the time. And I just have to get out of myself to remind myself that that's what's going on here.
Yeah, totally. I really relate to that. All the meanest things I've ever done or said have been out of my fear of worthlessness.
Gandhi said, be the change that you wish to see in the world. I always interpreted that as you need to start a food bank, or you need to work at an orphanage, or you need to just do this humanitarian work that he was so involved in. But really, it's like, if you want more love in the world, be more loving. And this is how we create change among each other, because we all are connected. And so when one of us makes that decision, it makes the decision much easier for everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the concept of as above, so below, as within, so without.
This is the crazy part, right? Like, Donald Trump's father was the most distant person in the world and never gave him validation and never told him that he loved him. This is the progenesis of the situation that we're in right now, is a father not giving their son love and this guy taking it out on the entire world. And this is what we all do. We all struggle for power and we all struggle to prove ourselves. And a lot of us would do the same things in the situation that he's in. Like, when you start to see the fear in you and how you act in your fear, like you were saying, like, oh, I was a bitch to people who made me feel bad. Like, that is exactly what he's being on a global scale, right? And so if we don't confront these things, we have the power to do real damage, whether it be to the whole world or just the people in our lives. So this is about breaking cycles. When we talk about generational trauma and those things, it's because our parents have lived in fear forever and they've projected those fears onto us. And now we live with those fears and just act the same way. And it's just a normal thread until somebody decides to live differently.
Totally. This is kind of random, but I think it's That 30 Rock episode where, like, Liz Lemon is talking about how badly she got bullied all through high school and stuff, and then she goes to her class reunion, and there's all these flashbacks and stuff, and it turns out she was just an asshole. Like, she was kind of a freak, I think, but, like, she was also just an asshole. I feel like that's been totally my experience. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, there have been people who have been unkind to me in my life, but I'm like, "Oh my gosh, everything is such a mirror." I have to kinda change first, you know what I mean?
I mean, when you change, everything changes, and it's the only thing you can change, right? And people are going to act from places of fear, and people are going to act from places of pain, and you don't have control over what they do, but you do have control over you acting from those places.
I was talking to my friend from high school the other day and I was like telling her about all this work I'm doing. And I'm like, well, it all stems from me feeling worthless. And she was shocked. She was like, what do you mean you feel worthless? That's so surprising to me. And I was like, well, you've seen me be like vitriolic and bitter and acidic, cruel. I was like, you've seen me be like that, right? And she's like, oh, sure. Yeah, I've seen you be like that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's that. That's me feeling worthless.
Yeah, and once you've looked at it and once you've understand it, you start to have a little bit of power and you start to realize that it's kind of the key to your growth. When we actually dig into that personal development and like coming from the darkest side of ourselves, like this is the idea of the shadow work. This is when you're slaying your dragon. The myths are the myth of you inside of you. Like when you take on your fear of unworthiness and unlovability, like so many of us need to, this is your dragon. This is your moment in your life. And everything after that is different because you've taken on that dragon and you've conquered that fear.
It kind of reminds me of that Joseph Campbell quote: the treasure you seek is in the cave you fear to enter.
Yeah, quote Cooks. What about it?
I just think that's so true. I think the thing that we want the most is like the scariest to ask for. I'll give an autobiographical example here. I want more than anything in the whole world to be seen and understood. And yet I am terrified of letting people see me, letting people in. Famously, terrible at hugs for that reason, terrible at eye contact.
What do you mean when you're saying that you want to be seen? What about you do you want to be seen?
Well, truthfully, it's all like this is all an ego trap. I totally understand that. And yet this is like primal.
Yeah, say more.
I want the way someone sees me to line up with the way I see myself, and then therefore I'll finally feel understood. But I know that that's really scary too, because sometimes when people see you, they leave you.
That's the fear.
That is the fear.
Is that if I show who I truly am, then people won't like me.
Yes.
Right. I think we all have this. I truly do think that we're all kind of different people. Like we posture as one and we are something else. And like in between that gap is what we call shame. Like who I think I am versus who I really am is this shame gap. And so the cave you're fearing to enter in this scenario is understanding that like who I am is enough, right?
Yeah.
And that like me and my flaws make me who I am, not just this perfect perception of myself. And that's so often what we're trying to put forth for other people. Like that's the idea of putting your best foot forward because other people are unrelenting as well because they're posturing as their best selves, right? And so we all just kind of have this shadow that exists right there in between who I think I am and who I really am. And so until we come to terms with who we really are and really sit with those things and forgive those things and have compassion for those things, we don't find any treasure. The treasure is in the compassion that we find for ourselves and for others. When you truly find that and you truly do liberate some of these fears, especially the ones over needing people to see me a certain way, then I have to perform less, I have to do less, I have to act less. I'm just more comfortable with who I am and what my life is. But yeah, I mean, some of this does require courage, right? Like some of what you're talking about in terms of just like putting yourself out there to see what comes back. When you do find a community that you love, and you do kind of develop these relationships where you are a little bit safer, these are the places to show your true self and to realize that people aren't necessarily thinking as much about you as you think they are. This is the other trap here is that like I am so obsessed with myself that I believe that everybody else is thinking about me all the time. And if I do a small thing wrong or I trip and fall or whatever it is, that they're going to think less of me. So this is the courageous part of this is to like put myself out there to realize that other people don't treat me as poorly as I treat me. The voice we have in our head that talks to ourselves, the things we say to ourselves, we would never say to another human being. My running narrative for much of my life and like especially over the last few years was like, I am a total piece of shit. Like, I am just such a piece of shit. And I would walk around with that like it was a mantra. I would never say that to another person, but I said it to myself over and over and over again. And it was because like that was almost a safer place than confronting my fear. Like, if I just knew that I was a piece of shit, I had license to just be a piece of shit. But if I really confronted that idea and realized, like, oh no, I have worth, like, I can do things, I can help people, I can hold doors, and I can make food for people, and I can do these things, like, that's where the challenge starts because now I have capability, but now I have worth, and now I have meaning, and now I have purpose. So this is the treasure that exists in this cave, is the meaning and the purpose and the worth.
And it does take mindfulness because maybe yours isn't the same as mine. I think we all have slightly different, or many of us have slightly different versions of this. So try to apply your own here. But it takes mindfulness because this shit is primal. This shit I've been experiencing since I was really small. So it's totally like, if you drive the wagon down the muddy road, really deep ruts are going to be in that dirt when it dries. It's kind of your samskaras, I guess.
Definitely. I think the road is rough whether we're trudging it or not. Right? Like, if I am living in constant fear, I am also suffering. If I am walking that road, like, that is actually a road that goes somewhere. And in the short term, it may be a little bit more painful as you like do develop a little bit of mindfulness around this. Like, this is a 24/7 job. Like, your job is not your job. Your life is your job. And like watching your mind and watching how fear creeps in, that is the 24/7 job, is to like be cognizant of this and not react to it. And so when you really start to embark on that journey, like, it may be a little bit rougher at first, but it's a totally different path and it's actually going somewhere. And you start to see the benefits like day in and day out as you live more consciously and more mindfully. So they're very different paths. I mean, one is just low key, low grade, constant suffering. And the other one is intense suffering in the short term for immense reward in the long term. Like, sitting with these things is painful initially, but that's mostly the fear too, right? Like I said, like, when I investigated my true worth, I found that I did have some worth and that I didn't have an excuse to hide from the world anymore because I could help people and I could make a contribution. I think, you know, just for everybody, like, we do have different reactions to fear. And this is a key point, but the underlying thing doesn't change, right? Fear is the constant. Some of us become more reclusive and we shut down and we like don't want to work and we don't want to do anything. Others of us become extremely anxious and we try to control every aspect of our lives. Some of us get extremely loud while others get extremely quiet. But at the core of both of those things is that latent fear. And confronting that for either of those people, right? Whether you're kind of like in this introverted kind of stage, like, this is like the introvert for young and the extrovert for young. Like, the extrovert versus the introvert, both of those people need to confront this shadow fundamentally. And both of those people will come out of it totally changed. Like, this is so important, is that like we are looking for purpose and meaning in our lives and we do not have to look any further than just right inside of us, and to be able to ask ourselves some of those simple questions of like, why don't I actually want to get out of bed? Is it because I hate my job and I hate my life, or is it because my life is terrifying?
Hiding yourself away is totally another form of control or laziness is another form of control because then you don't have to, if you don't participate, you can't screw it up.
Yeah,
It's very safe.
exactly, but, like, that is the kind of realization that we come to here, and this is, like, the nexus of compassion. When I am shut off from the world, and this is, like, the habit of mine, is, like, I will shut down. I am totally comfortable laying in a dark room for days on end. This was, like, my entire end of my drinking career, was just hiding, 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 like, leave me alone. And what you come to realize is that, like, this is fear. I had been beating the shit out of myself because I was like, I am just a lazy piece of shit. I am so worthless. Like, I can't even get out of bed. And then when I came to realize that, like, no, I was just afraid of this, I started to have compassion for myself. It wasn't because I was lazy. I'm not a fundamentally like lazy or slothful person. I'm a fundamentally scared person. And so when I take care of the fear, I take care of the behavior. Same for people with anger issues, right? Like, how many people go to a therapist to work on their anger issues or their depression issues? They're not working on the root of the issue when you talk about those things, right? You get solutions that are like, why don't we try to count to 10 before we say what we're going to say? Why don't we try to take deep breaths? And we're just treating symptoms. But when we explore the fear itself, we're exploring the core. And the core is what's going to change the behavior. We can't kind of attack the behavior from the behavior side of things. The behavior comes from our core. So the core is what has to change.
So we have all this fear and it's kind of ruling our lives and we're constantly obsessing over it. So what do we do next?
It's a beautiful question. And it's a lot of what this path starts and ends with is this freedom from fear. And once we get a taste of it, we keep going. That's the essence of a spiritual life, is that we can be liberated from these things and we can liberate these things. But we do have to have a certain level of faith in something, and in faith that it will all be okay, and faith that I am worthy, and in things like that. So as we try to get freer from fear, we come to bigger questions and the path continues onwards. What does it mean to be afraid? What does it mean to be courageous, right? What does it mean to be free from fear? These are all things that we can experience, and all of these things have tremendous meaning in our lives. But I think for this podcast and what we're going to do going forward is talk about the ways in which we have found that kind of freedom and the ways that we continue to find that kind of freedom, because it's the essence of a spiritual life, is to be freer and freer and freer. And that's what we're all craving, whether we know it or not. We think the bank account is going to give us freedom. We think the family is going to give us comfort. The comfort and the freedom are illusions as long as they're kind of dependent on other things. Other things can fail us. You know, we do experience tragedies in our lives. We lose jobs. These things are unreliable. So we have to find something that is reliable. And that's what building faith in a higher power is about. And I hope that people who are listening to this kind of understand that this is just the start. Like, this is where it begins, is understanding how tortured we can be by our own minds and entertaining that question of what if I wasn't this tortured, and what if my experience wasn't like this, and it can be different.
Yeah, we have a lot more to talk about on this subject, but I think that's it for today.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for listening. If anybody has issues in their life, especially related to fear and like how to deal with those kinds of fears in those particular scenarios, like those things are extremely helpful in being able to see how fear plays into our lives. Like, the problems that we face in our lives are mostly fear based. So I would love to talk about some of these things and just point to different parts of our lives where we are experiencing those things to really drive it home, because it's important that we understand this idea before we move forward. But that's all for next time. So thank you guys. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you. You can find us on Instagram at The Fall to Grace.
Love you.
Okay, love you.